Yeah, we are live.
Alrighty, there we are. We're live. Hello, everyone, and tuning in from PMA or YouTube or wherever you are tuning in from. Welcome. So excited to be here with everyone today. Just a quick round of introductions. I'm Christina. I'm the community manager at PMA. Whether you came from LinkedIn or Slack, hopefully you have come across my name as well. I'll be sharing some other contact details in the chat room throughout the event, so feel free to join us either on our LinkedIn page or Slack, wherever you want to be. My function at PMA is everything that is to do with community. So I love doing webinars or meetups, whether it's in person or similar like this with Suman, tuning in from all corners of the world to talk about product marketing and especially leadership, which I know is something that our community is really excited to hear about. So I'm sure you're not here to hear about me. I'm going to hand it over to our lovely speaker today to do a quick introduction. Handing over to you, Suman.
Cool. Thank you, Christina, for this organizing this event. Absolutely looking forward for the next 45 minutes. And again, hi to everybody. I think for introduction, I think it's been a fantastic ride in the last 17, 18 years across 4 continents in the US, UK, Europe, and now in India. And been working with Jio for around 2 years. I lead all the Jio platform products. And as a CPO, and the function is called as Geometrics. So we are the team who power audio, video, bot, events, and basically the product you're using right now, and lots of other products, and that's been delivering a lot of customer value in the food chain, all the way from retail, customer services across various super apps within Jio experiences. And I think I come with from a startup community, for the first 5 years of my journey, and that kind of shaped my journey from a technical person to a product person to a marketing person and a business person, right? So all the way kind of shaped myself. And then in the last 12 years, I've worked for companies like Cisco, Teradata, Tesco, Red Hat, and some of them in the US, and now back in India. Hopefully my view is that in the next 45 minutes, I can share some of my experiences. Hopefully that can help for the future leaders and folks to take up some of these learnings, and hopefully these learnings can help them shape it better. And that's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Amazing. And I think we've got quite a nice agenda coming up today. It looks like it'll be a very casual conversation. We're excited to hear more about how you got to your role today. Please do use the chat function. Let us know where you're tuning in from. If you have any questions coming up, be sure to let us know. There'll be time for that in the end. Great. So I'm just going to kick it off with the first question. Why are we here? And are leaders born or made? Excited to hear what you think.
I did miss you for a bit. I think there was a glitch. Could you come back? What's the question?
The main question on the topic, are leaders born or made? Very simple and direct.
Oh, you are putting me on the spot. Yeah, it's a brilliant question. That's a good one, actually, right? So the way I was, I would handle this. I think leaders are born and then they are made. It's kind of both ways. So you are born, and I think every born is a leader on their own, right? It's just that how much nurturing they do. So I think inside out, I kind of what I've learned is all these years there are a couple of pillars, right? There are like probably 3 pillars, 3 I's: identity, intellect, and instances, right? So I think that kind of makes one a leader, and that's what something. Leadership is a transition. It's not something you. When you're born a kid, you don't know whether you're a leader, right? So nobody knows. But then through this journey, you identify. Identity kind of is all about who you are. You're knowing bit. Intellect is something what you know about your skill set, the competency, and I think the other part, the instances, which is where I think you actually bring the leadership into the act. You care for people, you care for everyone, and then for community, for your customers, for your partners, and then the leaders do the doing, which is the doing part of the leadership. So I kind of structure it into 3 instances, right? I believe that these could be 3 I's, which kind of help me: identity, intellect, and instances. And I think that could potentially be the framework here. If you think that how can one be born as a leader and then shape themselves to keep leading in an inspiring way. So I think it's kind of a both ways to give my answer.
Cool. I think before we move on, I'd like to ask if there's any sound issues. Sunam, are you able to hear me okay?
I can hear it fine.
Yeah. And I'm having some issues with my sound. Is it coming out okay for the rest of the audience?
Christina, I believe there is some kind of music, so which at least I can hear in the background.
Yeah, but I can't hear anything here for some reason.
Okay, then fine.
All right. I mean, I can repeat myself if that's as the sound card. Yeah, there is no sound now. Now we're good. Are you still getting it?
Not now. Okay, so Christina, you're on mute.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Yes.
Great. Suman, can I hear you okay?
I think I'm hearing the sound again.
There is a nice trumpet being played, Christina.
Yeah. Now it's back.
Perfect. We are good to go. Thank you very much for that. We have a lovely question coming in, which I am going to add to our agenda. And moving swiftly on to our second question that I've been quite excited to hear as well. And I think a lot of people are excited to sort of hear about the journey. Can you share a little bit how you ended up in your current role today and any major changes and sort of milestones that you were able to experience?
Yeah, no, fantastic question. So I think somebody kind of asked me a different question in a one-on-one chat, like how did you end up getting into the right place at the right time? It looks like, right? So I think my journey has been something I thought I'll just share that as a nugget, that you don't end up getting into the right place at the right time. You build your competency and the opportunities kind of come to you. So I started out around 2005 as with my first startup. I was studying in Glasgow in the UK. So I have some connect back with you, Krishna. I think share the same land during masters. And when I was pursuing it, I thought I wanted to do something about bring my learning into some practicality. So that exposed me to working with some of the customers. And after I graduated in 2008, I think I decided to join Virgin Media. And I didn't quite like it because I couldn't really figure out what is inspiring, at least that part. And then I kind of realized, well, I want to do something which is more inspiring. And the startup was the call. So I returned back to Hyderabad and we built an education company, a tech company, and we kind of scaled up across 3 continents. One of the product made it in TechCrunch. That was a big moment. And then, it was acquired by one of the largest education company, Pearson. I think that journey of 4 or 5 years is almost like a real hands-on training of building the right thing for the right reason and then selling it with the right place, positioning it correctly, hearing out your customer's voice, and then pricing it correctly. And then I think that learning kind of shaped you at the next level, taking more risk. And I think in every organization, whenever I landed, of course, the core competency remains, which are on the skill set, I think, for any role for that matter. But I think that startup foundation helped to take on more risk in any other companies, such as Red Hat, where I stayed for about 5 years as a principal product manager. And there I did collaborate with folks from marketing, customer experience, platform teams, sales teams, a lot of customers. And again, that kind of taught you a lot about enterprises, how enterprises do business. And this actually shaped the next 5 years of foundation in Red Hat, helped to kind of see how from $0 to $1 billion revenue for the business one can achieve. And I've kind of been the first product manager for this platform team. So been there, seen it, and I think that kind of, again, helped me take on more risk. So I was hired by Teradata as a cloud site lead. I joined their product and engineering head and went back to India to help the team build the main platform. So when you do these roles, I think what I've seen, I think that's what I was trying to allude to in the previous point, that how did I end up getting into these roles? I think it's all about the identity, intellect, and then trying to be in the right place with the right reason. And I think these factors, when you look at it, and then what you did for people, apart from the competency as a whole, I think that really helps you to get into these roles, because when leaders hire leaders, they do ensure that they're hiring they try to at least ensure they're trying to bring somebody who cares about people. And then it's all about, I think, competency. I'll skip the Jio part or the Cisco part. I think it's the same story because it's more of scale problem rather than so now that I scaled up to the next level, it was more about now can you do it across 4 continents as a head of product at Cisco rather than, let's say, trying to do it in one continent. I think that become more of a skill problem. But the framework still remains same. So I believe that if I just refresh back, my journey has been with kind of, if I look at it 17 years, 18 years back, I never thought I'll land here. I thought I'll go more maybe, but here's where I am and I'm happy about it. And yeah, thanks for asking the question. Hopefully this helped the folks to kind of know a little bit more about me.
I think that's also great to hear that there was solo product marketing experience in the background as well. I know there's some people in our audience, in our community as well, that feels it's one of those the biggest hurdles to kind of, get through. We actually do have a lot of questions coming in, and I think it comes in nicely with a previous question, the skills. So in terms of skills and attributes that you kind of mentioned previously, what would make it essential for product marketing and how would you display those skills? And I'd like to tie that also back to Carmelio's question about top 3 characteristics that you would have to prove in order to be recognized as a leader. Could even go farther than product marketing, actually.
Both a brilliant question and try to summarize in a subjective way. So I'll take on the first one first, and then we can go on the leaders part of the pack, right? So when you look at the first question, right, which is kind of right, what is the core skills, right? What do I need as a core competency, and then what do I need as an extra, right, on top? So I think of it like a Lego block. When you think of like a Lego block, in Lego block you've got foundational elements, then you've got value elements, and then you've got kind of elements which are advanced, which makes you advanced, right? So I think for any product marketing roles, I would look from that perspective as a Lego block. It's about positioning, messaging, competitive intelligence, knowing about your customer's voice. Because most of the folks I've worked with folks who have succeeded, who made us successful. Also have worked with the folks where we struggled, and it's not because they don't know how it is. They probably never spoke to the customer, or maybe they spoke to the customer and they thought they're building a product, but they ended up building a service. So which means if you overhear your customer, you could also kind of go in the wrong footing. You kind of lost your vision where you want to go, and you just end up kind of building a service product, which is not even a product, right? It's a solution. So I think the 3 elements for me is really customer voice in today's world, customer centricity, but with the right balance, knowing the right reason why you're doing it. And every company has their own competitive edge, and kind of having the competency to double down on that and then bring it with the right messaging skills, which is the GTM and all the other narratives. And then, just like I talked about, right reason, the right place, the right time, the product need to go to the right place, to the right customer at the right time, just like you are as a candidate. If you have these 4 or 5 skills, and then I think for a product marketer, I would say you need to have fabulous communication skills in terms of really listening to people and then probably rephrase it back. I think if you kind of got this 4 or 5 elements, you can operate into many markets. It doesn't matter what are the frameworks, because a good product marketer or a product marketing leader can actually build framework. They don't need frameworks to be successful. So I think, so I'm looking for possibly like a very strategic person who would have all these things, nuggets, and then, which is kind of the foundational element is covered. Now we're talking about advanced stuff. I think that's where the strategy, leadership, ability to collaborate with all the functions, I think all those things come in. And now the roles start to look very, very complicated. And I think that's where the second part of the question, which is the leadership element, like what are the top 3 leaders? So I think knowing yourself is the first part of leadership, right? Who you are, right? So I read this book in 2000, I think 7 or 8. I was like almost like reading computer science day and night during my master's. I was getting bored, and I saw this guy with a T-shirt inside, and then he was taking his shirt off like this, and it says "Your Inner CEO," the name of the book. So it really kind of triggered me. I was like, okay, let me go read this book. Something interesting about it. And so I read that book, and it didn't come out like a book where it was teaching me something. it made me do a lot of assessment. I did a lot of assessment on my own. It was a lot of questions in the book. I was like, what is going on? Why is that they're asking me so many questions? But I actually keep on double down who you are. So once you know who you are, then you know how you want to be treated. Once you know how you want to be treated, you'll care for people. So I would say the top three part is actually I kind of talked about the identity part, and then you know who you are, kind of the knowing part as a leader. Then comes the intellect part, what you know, right? The competency and skill. Because if you are a leader but you don't know anything, then the difficulty you'll run into, you probably have to bring a lot of consultants to be successful, right? And then the third part, which is the doing part of the leadership, which is the instances part. And that instances is what you spend at work, at home, at public speaking, social life. Because people do remember these two first things I just talked about. And then they see how you react, how you listen, what you do, and then how you behave when you're successful. I think all those things, as well as when you fail. And I think these instances basically make people believe that whether they want to work with you or not. I think that's why I said 3I. If you can hold on your 3I, I think you can possibly succeed anywhere in the planet, depending on, of course, the kind of companies you like to work for or the continent. But these 3Is are mostly important for me, at least in my lens. Yeah.
That's very interesting. There's a few very tactile skills there and quite like non-tangible leadership stuff. I think for me, who's fairly early on in my career, that finding yourself and knowing who you are, I hope it comes in time, but it is something that probably is a trial and error. So I really appreciate that point, as I think most of our audience would as well. Similar on a similar thread to that, how can one build a strong personal brand and reputation then in product marketing, sort of as a tool to find yourself?
Great question. I am actually kind of an outcome-driven person from get-go. Usually, I don't. What doesn't inspire me if there is no outcome, and the people who I'm working with, if they don't really believe in outcome or kind of don't have the culture of really trying to achieve the right outcome with the right reason, I kind of feel like, well, those are the places I don't want to be. So I usually take my own call. So I think before we answer the question, what is that? If you can, let's say, inspire people and they work for you for free without getting paid, then you know that you are a good leader. And it has happened to me many times. I think even if I do it now, I think it will happen, right? Because I think that will kind of tell you whether you're a good leader, a great leader, or probably bad leader. I think you come to know about it. And then I think going back to your question, because now you kind of know the outcome, like what is the best possibility, and then you can also know what is the bad possibility. Now that people are getting paid, you're giving them a culture you believe, and you're giving them a company, but they don't want to work for you. So that's kind of like a good and bad leader, right? I think you kind of know, you have all the things, but you don't want to work with this leader, right? So I think that kind of tells you where you want to go and how you want to kind of nurture your skill set. So same goes for marketing, right? Because again, it's not very different, I think, from marketing either, right? It's the same thing. Because first, I think people want to figure it out what kind of people you are, and then comes all the competency elements. Because I really fundamentally believe something I watch sports people, especially Olympians or people who are like good at really something or could be like a singer. I have a lot of appreciation for arts and sports, and I really get inspired, which is, I think, on a pullback for marketers. The singers or the sports people are very much aware of who are the audience, right? And they also know how to position themselves. But they are good at one thing, which is either singing or playing an instrument or maybe running a marathon. And they are just good at that great art, what they're good at. And that's their kind of the main thing. I think often I have noticed people, like I kind of give you guys all core foundation of marketing. But there are a lot of people in the world who will chase all 5, 6 and they'll be good in nothing. So what I have believed in my life, that if you're great in something, instead of trying to be good in everything, or you believe that you're good in everything, you're usually not good in everything. I mean, that's a fact of life. But if you're great in something, then you'll be in demand. And if you're in demand, you'll be a rock star. And if you're a rock star, then you'll be a fighter, right? Then usually like the fighters don't give up, right? So even if you don't know few skills, you can pick them up. So I think that's my framework of being a successful person, like depending on what you define success. Because if I pick up Sachin Tendulkar from cricket, even if you ask him to be a bowler for a moment, he'll be a fighting bowler, not like a regular bowler, right? Even though he can't bowl, probably like Brett Lee, but just to draw a parallel that he would like to give it a fight because he's one of the best batsmen, right, in that century. So I think that would be my analogy. How would I define growth, great, and framework, all of that kind of packaged it altogether.
Nice. I like that. Getting a bit of a differentiation between like leadership and management, maybe like one thing is quite day-to-day task based, but you're sort of like how do you allow people to sort of move forward without being like a simple Asana task.
Yeah.
Which is good. I hope that also fed into Kushal's question. How do I know if I'm the good kind of leader or the bad kind of leader? Knowing Kushal a little personally, I think you're doing okay. So hopefully you'll be a bit more confident. But yeah, so Kushal is also one of our ambassadors for the India chapter, so definitely quite an active member in our Slack group. Definitely one to reach out to.
Sure.
Cool. Great. So there's we're bringing the conversation back to product marketing. What do you think is important for a company or industry to what are the important things to kind of choose from when you're deciding where to work as a product marketer and to start building the leadership that you might envision?
Yeah, I mean, in today's generation, I would work for companies, first of all, who are already digital. I think that makes the life a little more interesting. Of course, you can be part of a transformation story, but I think that'll be like probably one of the nugget I look for, like companies who are already digital. I think that's one aspect. The second is, I think, what is the scope in for me? Like, what is in for me? Because this is a general question. As a product marketer, you can be a product marketing manager, you could be a senior, you could be a director, you could be a VP, you could be a CMO. So I think all these roles, what usually vary is the scope, then the competency usually varies, and then what is in for you, right? Because not every company can offer you what really is your North Star. And for me, you cannot achieve a North Star if the company you think don't have the culture. Because you can have a strategy in the morning in the breakfast, and then you eat the culture and the strategy in the lunchtime because you don't have a culture. So I think you find out, at least first, the people part, that do you want to work with these people? And Peter Drucker, I think he has mentioned this point that culture is the key, and I'm just kind of alluding to his point that if you believe that the company has a great culture, not just one person, but probably a few folks you've spoke to, they kind of represent that, and then you can learn something instead of just part of your knowing you're practicing. If you can learn something new on the product marketing, because there are many aspects of marketing, right? I mean, it's not just about trying to do the core, because there are advanced stuff, which is on the growth side, which is also, a good product marketer would be not just piggybacking on what they did last 10 years. They'll also look at the current trends and then try to make the right decisions, right? I think it's about analytical skills. It's about strategic skills. And if you think that you can pick up a member of a team you can learn from, I think I would go work for that company because I can learn something out of it. And then I can change my role or pivot in my next job. So usually if you give yourself like 3 years in each job, which is like the time executives usually give, like year 1, year 2, year 3 in their mind, I think why not for a product marketer? I mean, you just choose the company, you got 3 years, have a dialogue that this is where I'm going to be in 3 years' time. If they give you that, go for it. Like, that's how I would approach it.
It's very interesting, from people maybe like us in our early 20s, 3 years does seem like quite a long time, but you sort of do need to build that understanding of the industry or the company itself. I really appreciated the point about culture, because so many times we talk about like the industry specifics, but I do think that it was very, very well made point. So thank you. I know that many of our audience and a lot of the people in the community right now are unfortunately maybe feeling the effects of recent layoffs or, worried that is coming in the horizon. I know there's some crazy stuff happening in the tech industry. So was, sort of bringing back the conversation to a different stage of the working life and leadership. What would be your advice to those who are currently searching for their next product marketing role or, is preparing to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so first of all, let's talk about, maybe we'll just skip through the bad news quickly and then come to the good news, because there was always two parts to the story, right? So if I skim through the bad news, I think the bad news are going to be over in very near future, like probably about a month or two is what my prediction is. I think around the world, because if you look at the macroeconomic bed, I think anywhere it's opening up, markets are opening up, companies are starting to hire. I know people are not shouting about it, or probably you don't see a lot of LinkedIn posts these days about jobs, like come work for me. But I think jobs are there. It's opening up compared to what it was last 30 days or last 60 days. Even if you look at the US news, I think that's the story, right? People are hiring again. So first thing is, bad news is over. Now, the second thing, I think, usually, like, people don't respect you when you don't have confidence. I think that's what, because you lose confidence, you'll be a different person. Everybody will look at you differently. So I would say work on your core, right? Which is the inner bit I talked about, right? Which is, I believe, no matter what are the market, what is the condition, you should condition your mind and your skill set so well you don't depend on one company. I'm just telling this. I know I'm working for Jio with a lot of responsibility. I'm saying this. You should always make sure you're well conditioned to take on any company, any market. Anyone should be able to hire you in the world, right? That's one. So I think being fearless, you'll be only fearless when you have the skills. Otherwise, it'll be a little foolish to be fearless. I think the third element is about, like I said, if you can build a community, which I think I really like about PMM, and which is a good demonstration of you can show leadership. And if is that people feel that you as a leader, or again, leader can be anybody, even a 1 year experienced person. Like, leader doesn't have to be like a 20-year experienced person, right? End of the day, if you can show the leadership there on the ground, then people want to work for you for free. I think employers want to hire you too. Employers are also not fools, right? So I think basically your value proposition is what I'm saying, right? In a marketing sense. So if you really know your value proposition, about your core competency, about the skill set, and if you're really confident, if you're well conditioned on your mind, then why do you care about the market condition? Because you can create the job rather than you going for a job, right? So be the creator side of the jobs rather than looking for a job is what my advice is. Number one, which is the good news. If you're not so bold, at least work for a bold leader or a bold colleague of yours, right? That way, at least you can be bold, maybe before the next job. And I think the approach which I have been taking, I feel always that there is something I can learn, and I believe this is always plays out for me. There are a lot of people, they believe they know everything in their life, but I really believe I probably don't know. I still need to know. If you really don't know yet and you can still know, I think then you pretty much got your craft well. You're well positioned, because people want to work with people who are not just well learned but also well behaved. So I think that way you can find the next job. But yeah, because we right now, I think my view is that around the world jobs are opening up in next quarter. So we should, instead of being worried, if you're ready, then you're ready to take on that opportunity, I think, in your hands. So I think that would be my message for everybody.
I like that. There's a lot of focus on the personal brand as well as knowing
Yeah,
yourself
build your personal
before.
brand. I think that's my motto.
Yeah, absolutely. And thankfully, there's places like PMA, if I don't say so myself, where it's sort of we are trying to allow people to have a bit of advocacy.
No, I mean, it's not because of the collaboration. I have been following you guys for a little over 15, 16 years now, right? I mean, it's good work. I have been learning a lot of things from PMA and community and docs. So it's a privilege and honor, for you to host me, and absolutely. So it goes both ways.
Oh, likewise. And it is something that we do try to hone in on the, being a place to stand out of your company. And that's my sales pitch over for the community. And I do think the point you made, I think there's an element of mentorship that I don't think some people don't have the time to dedicate to, but it is such a valuable experience if you're able to, identify someone that you can learn from, and a type of leadership that you aspire to. Amazing. We're moving on to about half an hour in, so I'm going to open up to ad hoc questions, even though we had a few really great ones. I'm just going to kick off with one from Carmelo. I'm saying that right? That has mentioned in the past, one of the things product marketing we always say is right product is for the right people at the right time. How are you sure to prove it when you have very unique USP and no historical data to compare? bit less of a leadership question, but I'm excited.
That's a great question, right? So I think the short answer is to begin with, right? Before we go subjective, right? Leaders are often right. There is a saying, so don't take it in a negative way. My point is, you just have more experience. Like once you have more experience, you have seen more patterns. Your mind is more conditioned with more patterns, right? You have got more skill set. You've seen it in the past, because whatever problem you're solving is not a future problem, it's a historical problem. It is today's problem. It has happened yesterday, and you are solving that problem. Unless you are Elon Musk trying to send people to space, right? I think therefore, like how would he ever do a test on such a product, which is like sending people to space, right? So you have to have, so there is a concept of product instincts, right? And usually that is covered under product sense, and then comes the product execution part. So product marketing people or team, right? I think professionals have to be also a little inspiring in that sense, right? You need to go with hypothesis. You build a hypothesis. You build more hypothesis. If people start to, I know you may not always have all the data, but if you can build a community of people, start to believe in your hypothesis, and let's say you launch that experiment, and that experiment start to generate result by the right user, at least you had in mind. Maybe you had in mind a different set of users, personas, but you're proven wrong with a different persona, but people are using it. Then at least you learn something, which is maybe I was selling to the wrong person, but now at least you started selling it to the right person. That's probably your learning. But if your hypothesis still work in terms of adoption of the product, then you probably don't worry much. You change your course and focus on the right persona, and then go do it. Because if you look back, nobody really knew what they're building or getting into for the first time, unless you are copying, let's say, another e-commerce player trying to build another, because that's easy. You know already what the market is. But if you're the first e-commerce player in the world, how do you build it? You go to the offline stores, physical stores, and Krishna, you're sitting in London. I have worked for Tesco. So I mean, I think you can really comprehend the example I was giving, because people are going there physically. They're also going there online, and now they're using their ClubCard Plus, which is built by my team and me, and it has 130 million active users, right? And that's like almost like UK's population, right? So how do you build such a product? Do you copy Prime? Because Prime is not a market in the UK, right? So I'm giving you some real life example. So you have some hypothesis, you test it fast, maybe you roll it out in a geography or a small region. If it plays out, then you try out a few more, and then you build more hypotheses, and then you go roll out, right? I mean, the underlying point I mentioned earlier in my leadership nugget is, I think, being a little bit of bold and risk taker, but you also know where it takes you, if it takes you down, and making sure everybody in the stakeholders know about it. That's the name of the game. If you have it, then yeah, I mean, you don't have to always chase the data, you chase the outcome. Because if the outcome is correct, and if your hypothesis is correct, the data will start to also be cognitive of what you're trying to do. I think that's how I'll approach it.
I know there's probably, if we go into the issue of data and metrics, that could be a whole different conversation for a different time.
All the SaaS metrics.
I'm sure it's very interesting as well. So maybe pick your brains at a different time. We also had another
metrics. Not to promote this, but I have written a book in 2022. It was really about data for product managers and product marketers. So I think I would urge you, if you feel about how to solve this problem, there is a science behind it, and we can go on. So I probably request you to get a copy, or maybe you can reach out to me. I can try to see if I can get you a signed copy. Yeah.
Great. I have a link prepared for it as well. I might need Ankuth's help with getting it to the chat publicly. I did send it in the speaker chat. But I will be sending that out in the following in a follow-up email. So sure. We'll definitely go into that a little bit a little later on. We had a really great question come in as well from Lasse. I think a lot of people will also relate to this, and you're going to be digging back into your previous work experience as a solo product marketer. What is your advice to build a full product marketing function? I'm also curious, how big is your product marketing team at the minute?
Yeah. So I think there are so usually when you're building from the ground up for the first time in your life, you would not know this, right? But let's say now after this podcast, you know the answer. So now you go try. So there are 3 P's, right? Which is like product marketing, the people part of it, and the practice, right? So I think it doesn't matter whether you're one or many. If you have these 3 P's correctly defined, and that is getting you success, the only thing you need to solve is the scope part, because as you're getting more people, that's where the practice is important. Because when you're alone, or I have seen like people who are coming from startups, like they have done something on a startup, they would come and say, oh, I will go solve the world's hunger. Yeah, you can, but the point is you cannot do it with the framework what got you there, A to B, because now it's a different problem altogether. The dimension has changed, right? So I think being cognitive of the fact that be ready to fail, I think that's important, and be ready to learn. But so basically what you need to keep changing is the practice part, not the product part, because product has got you that far. Don't go change the people, because if you've already hired these people, make sure there is the right reason to keep them and make sure they're successful with you. So you should probably look at the practice that the framework you're using, are they good enough for others to use? Because now you are not marketing the product yourself, you're getting others to do the job for you. So maybe there is one person who is just building narrative around positioning. There is one person who is building marketing research, right? Which is extremely important for you to figure out like competitors, personas, customer voice, etc., right? And then somebody is trying to figure out like the GTM strategy. So then what happens in a full-blown function like this? You got people with different skill set who's really good at discovery. Somebody is really good at market research or intelligence. Somebody is really good at GTM. Then you make sure that, because your North Star never changed, you're still after probably a bigger mission now, which is nothing but adoption or more revenue, right? Because that's pretty much it, right? If you look at it. So if that is the mission, then what you need to really focus on is, have you got the right people? Have you given them the right processes, practices, and the right system? And not making them mad, because if you make them mad, they cannot really do their job. Because you might be able to do it faster, but then if you believe somebody can do the job better than you for a particular roles and responsibilities, such as marketing intelligence or competitive intelligence, because let's say in Tesco, pricing was like game changer. I need to know competitive price to price something. So then do I go do the job myself, or do I hire somebody? You hire somebody if they are good at that job, and then you rely on them, you give them the culture. Then you can actually become a solo PM, and you can scale up to become a CMO, right? Because what you have really done, you got 3 P's, and these 3 P's is a North Star, right? Which is product to products, people to people, too many people, right? So one person to many, I think one to many, and then framework to keep optimizing framework, because once you're kind of changing from solo to leadership role, I think that usually the guidance is be open to change the framework, because that is not going to scale up for you. I think that's what I would recommend.
That's interesting. That was also something that we had a question in previously about how to scale a team or how to structure a team. And sort of moving back to, we have a few more questions. I think it's more interesting than my question. Thank you, Carmelo, for being so engaged. So what is your advice for a full stack product marketing manager? Do you think full stack PMMs can exist? How can they evolve? This is your first year as a product marketer, so well done. I think you're doing very well already. Great question.
Who asked this question?
Carmelo, I think it came in just a minute ago at the bottom.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so first of all, this term of full stack, I think it was coined, I believe, like a couple of years back, right? About I think somebody even like was doing this job in. I had a story from Valley, like somebody working in Snowflake, kind of was on the SaaS side of Snowflake. Snowflake is a data company, so they ensure that all these movements around data and data gravity and every other problem the old school data players used to solve. They solved in a very brilliant way, right? And they became one of the largest SaaS startup at those time in 2017. And I think the name was coined full stack. And then I got into it. I was like, what is this full stack? Like, do they go like write code or something? Like, what do they do? Like, what does this mean? Like, and then the term got coined, which is full stack product managers. I was like, wow, now we're going to hear full stack designers. So what does it mean? So I think my view is that it's a transition, like I mentioned about leadership. So you don't become full stack because by taking a course or certification or just one person. So you work with the community. That's one, right? One within your company, then one outside the company, something like a PMA, to keep evolving because you are having a roadmap. Maybe when you start your job, maybe the first job you do is with a very large company. So usually my advice for product marketing people, though I have started with startup, is you work for a large company. That's very, very important. I think so that you understand one job well, one part of the function really well, and then keep on probably try a few startups because that way you can get the exposure of everything around full stack. And then in a full stack marketer, I would say you are pretty much looking at the full clarity around, all the way from positioning, messaging, demand gen, sales support, value proposition, market research, full stack, right? And then working with executives, talking to customers, executives, right? And then pretty much you're owning the digital strategy. So you're kind of operating like a CTO, CMO slash CPO at times. So even depending on what role you are in, and then so there'll be a lot of overlap. So be prepared for the overlap. So my advice would be start with a large company because that way you can probably learn in a structured way and then experience the role. Let's say you learn market intelligence, but you did really well. And then you go to the startups, get more exposure, more hands across the full stack marketing lifecycle. And then kind of you go after the big companies again to test yourself or join a growth phase company to test yourself. I think that's how I would probably advise it, or I would have done it if I would have done it now. So, yeah.
Brilliant. I think the also idea of like cross collaboration as a function of product marketing is becoming more and more recognized or realized, and it's definitely not the easiest thing to figure out in your first year. So brilliant. And there was something else that came up in the prep questions. What do you look for in new hires then, considering maybe some people are quite new to product marketing? What is it that you look for?
This is the toughest question. I mean, but I know this is a lot of people are kind of thinking like, oh, what is the like a best possible? What is that in the hiring manager mind? So I think a lot of this will vary depending on what you're trying to hire, whom you're trying to hire. So if I'm trying to hire an IC as a PMM, I would look for like attitude, right? And then look for one key skill they're good at, like I was mentioning, what they're really great at, like not just ordinary, like just make sure you are like great at one thing in marketing. And then, yeah, I mean, if you're like good at the rest of it, you are hired because one, you got a good attitude, and then you're like great at something, and then you're trying to learn other things. Bingo, you have the job. Because often people I get a lot of people who are like good at everything or try to say that they're good at everything and they're great at nothing, right? So usually I think it's always good to go for like one subject matter expertise and then be a generalist, open to learn, with a great attitude of collaboration. Because in marketing today, now how the companies are scaling up, and when I mentioned jobs are going to open up due to US jobs, a lot of US jobs are getting moved to Eastern Europe, right? And then also moving to APGC and other countries. So therefore you'll be sitting in these countries trying to market your product, but the product is in the US, for instance. So you probably not talking to a lot of customers yourself. So you're relying on the data, and then you're relying on your collaboration skills. So if you're like have a great attitude, people you can collaborate with, then you'll be successful in your job. And people often hire people who will be successful in their job. So that's how I'll connect the dots. Yeah.
I like that you said the issue of looking for one specific thing, because I think it ties back to what we talked about a little bit about, if you're able to build your personal brand a little bit across this one niche. Sure, as marketers here, we're probably used to niching down. Would you always look for leadership qualities in new hires, or a nice distribution, or what is it that you?
Yeah, I think what is leadership, right? That's like probably a longer time conversation, but I think leadership is something, I think it doesn't get defined by the age or experience. There are like a lot of wrong notion about leaderships, right? So a lot of people feel like if I have like 45 years of experience, or who has 45 years of experience or 40 years of experience, then probably you should not work anymore. Like if you're still leading, then there is some either like what are you leading at that point? Are you still in corporate? So I would look for people who are young but are inspiring in their own ways, and then they know how to take care of their colleagues and also can collaborate. Have the 2 ears open and speak less. I think that's like one more thing. And basically have better listening skills is what I mean. And then once you kind of package that well, because you may not have a chance as a youngster when you're trying to have the first job to show leadership, but maybe you have done that in your school or in a unique way, maybe in a college, maybe in a sports game. Try to remember that in a unique way, and then maybe during the group interviews, you might have performed better than others by bringing the group together rather than thinking about yourself. I think those are small elements, right? Because what happens is, again, just to re-emphasize, competency, if you have great competency, people will remember you what you just did. But if you have great leadership, people will permanently remember you because it's permanently stored in the brain, right? So what goes in the heart goes in the brain, right? Permanently, I think. Otherwise, it's just a temporary memory, because your best skill is tomorrow's good skill. Remember that, right? So if your today's base skill is tomorrow's good skill, because every other person can do it with ChatGPT or some AI product, then probably you should think like, what is that I got? Then probably give others a good experience about you. That is leadership for me. If you can do that genuinely, then you are a good leader, and people would like to work for you for free. And if you do that, then people are going to hire you as a leader. As simple as that.
What an inspiring note to finish. I think tied into so many other questions that did come in. But before we do wrap up, I do have one last question, which I think we're more excited to hear about. Tell us about this book.
Oh, wow. So I would want people to try this and not, share too much detail. But yeah, I think it's about people who are passionate about data. And I had some throat issue, and in 2022, I was told by the doc that you kind of develop some tear on it throat, so you're probably going to go. You should go like take a break of 3 weeks. As a 3 weeks break in Jio. What I do, I don't think it's makes sense. So let me take a week for a week, right? I took a week break. I came back. So in this week, I wrote this book. So the book actually is very small. It's probably like 90 pages, right? Hardly 90 pages. So I know probably people will be like 90 pages. What is it? So I think in 90 pages, it is well suited for people who are already a product marketer, already a product manager. It is not suited for people who wants to be a product marketer because they don't know. They will struggle a bit with the book, with the narratives, because they need to experience it a little bit. But I think for them, it is trying to give you real nuggets about how you can practically use these skills. And I've tried to use a lot of real life examples, some KPIs, some dashboards, what I infer. So I think if you're like in the job, you want to use something which can guide you in the job, then maybe use the book. It's called Win the Digital Edge with Data, which I think everybody's focused now by how to win the digital edge with data. And that was the whole idea. And even how I tested it, I think that was probably inspiration. So I used it on my own inspiration. Instead of going to the publisher, I put it into some of the product marketing and product manager groups who tried the Amazon Kindle version. They liked it. And then I got some feedback from folks in Europe and UK and the other folks in the US and India. And I got somewhat 1,000 readers in first 7 days downloading the book. And then I was like, wow, this is probably merit publishing. So then I went ahead and published it. For that experience, if you want to try it out, go try it out and share your feedback. Love to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
That's really interesting, and I'll definitely be sharing a link in the follow-up email, as I have mentioned. I know that even though publishing the book, I know Harvey from our team as well has recently published a book, and it's a whole operation. It's almost a job on top of a job. So congratulations on a successful launch. Brilliant. So we're coming close to the allotted time. So we're happy to wrap up at the minute. I just wanted to thank Carmelo, Lassie, Kushal for all the great questions, and really excited to hear any other feedback that people might have. Where to find us on the PMA Slack, as well as our LinkedIn if you had any questions coming up. And we do, wherever you registered for this event specifically, there's also a discussion function following, so feel free to drop any more questions there. And there is also a leadership channel in the chat in our PMA Slack where we can continue the conversation. Other than that, Sunam, this has been an absolute pleasure. I am so honored to be able to speak with you, and working with you up until now has been an absolute breeze. And I sincerely hope this isn't the end of our collaboration with PMA and Jio and yourself.
Yeah, I think it's just the beginning, and I'm glad that, first of all, thanks to you for being such a beautiful host for us. You make sure that you give me good surprises with great questions, and I think thanks to the crowd and thanks to Camilo and others for shooting brilliant questions. I think that kind of everybody is excited when you shoot great questions. I felt not engaged, so thanks for giving all of us a great time.
Brilliant. And to that, I hope everyone has a lovely day and lovely evening wherever you are, and sincerely to hope we all meet again.
Sure.
Very much.
Take care. Bye.
Talk soon. Bye.
Sure.